When this happened, I was living in a small town with lots of forest nearby. It was small, and everybody was friendly with each other. Living in an area where everyone knows everyone. My ma and pa didn't really take stranger danger seriously. Don't hop in a stranger's van. Don't take candy from people you don't know well, is the most I was told. Being young at the time I was taught this. I wasn't told why. I wasn't told of how monstrous humans could truly be. In my innocent mind, I saw no reason for a person to want to hurt others. I believed this for most other creatures too. I wasn't afraid of animals or insects, so it was no surprise that this would have happened, seeing how stupid I was. It was in early spring, and I was going for a usual walk through the neighborhood, and into the local woods, admiring the flowers and listening to the birds' calls. I was drawn further into the darkness that was the forest. Soon, I didn't even know where I was. The trees weren't familiar. I was deeper into the woods than I'd gone before, and just before I traced my steps back home, I heard something. Help. The voice was dry, raspy, and quiet. It sounded strained, like whoever was speaking felt pain to do so. I turned back, trying to find out who or what was calling for me, although my innocent mind was certain it was a person. Over here. I followed the voice and soon found the creature in front of me, its long limbs wrapped in the thorny brambles it was trapped in, its face covered by its long, blood-soaked hair. Please, help me, child. Despite what I wanted to do, my gut told me not to go closer to it. It was dangerous. I ignored the feeling. As I tried to remove the brambles from the creature's body, I only succeeded in cutting my hands. I can't get you out, I sadly told the creature. Try harder. You don't want me to die here, do you? It shook its head, removing the few vines I'd managed to pull off its antlers. Of course, I don't want you to die. I then remembered my mother's pruning shears. I'd seen her using them to cut plants before, so they should work, right? I'll be right back. I can get some tools to cut you free. As I got up to leave, it grabbed my leg. Don't go. I'll be lonely. We can free me later. The creature pulled me back down to the ground. I stared at it again, noticing all the bones poking through its skin. That's all it really was. Skin and bones. Breaking the eerie silence, it spoke again. My name is Inoki. What is yours? I didn't hesitate to respond. I'm T. After that, we started to talk more, until the sun started going down. Then I went home. That night, I stayed awake in bed, wondering about my new friend. How did he get stuck there anyways? The next day, I brought the pruning shears, and with some effort, I removed the brambles. Inoki never thanked me for the help. He just tried to stand up, but he was too wounded to move. I innocently asked, do you want me to go get my parents? They have band-aids. But he shook his head. I need more than that. I need food to get stronger. And so, I ran home and got some food, mostly biscuits and some bread. I can't eat that. He turned away from the food in disgust. What do you eat then? He looked around and then pointed at a small bird. It had gotten tangled in the nearby brambles. It was thrashing around trying to get free. Go get that for me, child. I remember feeling scared in that moment. I loved birds. Whenever I found a wounded one, I'd try to take care of it before my pa would take it to the vet, while secretly just putting it down. But without even realizing what I was doing, I'd already removed the bird from the brambles. I watched in horror as Inoki ate the poor thing. He didn't seem to like it, but he did anyway. I kept visiting him every day, bringing him more birds or other poor animals for weeks. He was looking better each day, yet still bone thin, until eventually I came to him with another bird. He wasn't sitting in the place he always sat. I called out for him, but he didn't come. Then I heard the trees above me shake. I looked up, just in time to run as it jumped down and chased after me. It caught up to me in no time. It had longer legs and was faster, and it grabbed my leg, and its claws sunk into me. I screamed. I screamed and screamed until half of the local neighborhood came running into the woods. One or two even had guns, but Inoki got away before he could be killed. I never set foot in the woods again. After I was patched up and told my story to the local newspaper, I was told about what Inoki really was, a Wendigo. I was told I was goddamned lucky to have gotten away, but stupid to have even helped him. My parents moved away after that, and I was finally properly taught about stranger danger.
My twin sister, Janessa, was murdered at age 16. I witnessed it like a coward from atop a tree in the forest where it happened. I'd actually blacked out the memory for a while. I knew she was dead, but I couldn't remember how it happened. It wasn't until I tried therapy that it slowly came back to me. I was also reminded of how much my parents used to fight. Our family was planning a camping trip the day before my sister's death. Before leaving, my parents erupted into another massive fight. Janessa and I had been looking forward to the trip, and once again, our parents' awful communication skills were ruining it before it even began. We snuck out of the house and took a lift to the forest. We left our phones at home, not caring whether our parents would be worried sick. We enjoyed ourselves the first day. I set up our tent, made a fire, had s'mores, and did all that stuff one typically associated with camping. The next morning, everything changed. I woke up alone in our tent. Outside, I hear my sister talking to someone. Inquisitive, I opened the tent and saw someone sitting at our now out campfire who looked just like me. The figure transformed as soon as Janessa realized it wasn't me. Together, we ran off, that thing rushing after us with heavy steps. I was faster than my sister and a bit more athletic. I grabbed onto a tree branch and climbed up a tree. Janessa was not so lucky. I watched it happen. I watched that thing tear my sister to pieces. I'm still haunted by her screams. I also understand now why she always appears badly mutilated in my nightmares. I stayed up in that tree overnight, my sister's corpse lying in the leaves, her remaining eye always staring up at me. While in therapy, there was a moment when I suddenly recalled the hallucination I had the morning after my sister's death. I thought I saw her corpse clawing at the tree where I hid. She wanted me to come down and join her. It caused me to panic and cry out. A couple of men who had been camping in the area heard my screams, and at last, I was rescued. My parents don't argue anymore. I hardly see them at all anymore since my sister's death. We're an upper middle class family. Over the last couple of years, my parents have frequently gone on vacations. They don't tell me where, and I never ask. I usually just wake up and find out they've left yet again. I'm out of high school now, and I have no career path yet. I've only really had one thing on my mind since I remembered what killed Janessa. Now, I'm returning to the forest where she died. Now, I'm going to go after the thing that killed her. I've been preparing for this, and if it is a Wendigo like I suspected, then I am more than ready to take my revenge. This is how I'm doing it. I took a lift again. Had the driver known what I was carrying in my bags, I doubt they would have let me in. As I sat there, the realization of what I was doing grew heavily on me. What the hell am I doing? I've been talking myself up for the last couple of years. As much as I want a glorious victory, the closer I've come to this day, the more I daydream about dying the same way Janessa did. As angry as I am with my parents, I don't think they deserve to lose their only remaining child. But I just can't move on knowing that thing is still out there. My legs were as dense as gold once I tried to exit the cab. The driver watched awkwardly as I struggled to pull myself out while putting on my backpack and working to carry the other supplies. Why was I doing this alone? I don't want anyone else getting hurt in this, I think was my reasoning. But, God, I wish I wasn't out here doing this alone. With each step I took into the forest, the more the terror numbed. I was in the domain of the Wendigo now. I wasn't entirely sure how much of the information about them was real. I knew they could change their appearance. I know that their true form is just like the drawings people have made. There's no way to be an expert on these things unless you've actually dealt with one. I'm still not sure why it decided not to come after me. Based on its size, I doubt it would have had any difficulty. Instead, I'm still alive and crazy enough to come back and pick a fight. As I set up camp, I found myself jumping at the sound of any bird caller movement from a nearby animal. The way I hammered in my tent, I knew I was calling attention to myself. In my left pants pocket was a gun. Like werewolves, I'd heard that silver bullets were necessary to kill Wendigos. What if I'm wrong? The thought had been with me ever since I stepped foot back into these woods. I stopped frequently while setting up. Behind a nearby tree, I was almost certain I could see someone watching me and then hiding behind it again. I didn't bother to walk over and check it out. I finished up my tent and made my sleeping bag inside. As I did this, I heard calls that sounded almost human off in the distance. It probably knew I was here. The minutes went by slowly, but soon dusk set upon the forest. I built a fire like the one Janessa and I had made. I roasted 2 marshmallows. Despite her absence, I made a s'more for her as well, resting it on a sizable rock near the fire. As I ate it, I thought about our last night together. All things considered, it was pleasant. Being twins, we had moments where we'd gotten into arguments like our parents. We'd fought one another. We had our problems. But that night had been pleasant. I'd actually been glad we decided to camp without our parents. As frightened as I still was, I felt a warmth not from the fire. A sense of calm overcame me as my memories were suddenly flooded with the good times Janessa and I had. The good times were not for long. I could hear footsteps not far behind me. Jeremy. I could never forget that voice. It sounded just like Janessa, but I knew it wasn't her. For some reason, I felt compelled to sit there calmly. As it approached, I could tell it was going over to take a seat at the rock where I'd left the s'more. I glanced delicately to my right. I watched as a figure that looked almost identical to the Janessa I remembered pick up the s'more and take a bite. "That's not yours!" I surprised myself blurting that out. The fake Janessa ignored me, continuing to scarf it down. My terror turned to anger. The thing responsible for my sister's death was standing right next to me, mocking my grief. I didn't wait for it to finish. I pulled out my gun and pointed it directly at the figure. Before I could fire, the creature jumped to the left and turned around. I was struck with paralysis when I saw the mutilated face of my sister's corpse staring back at me. I'm trapped, Jeremy. I struggled to keep aim. How dare that thing pretend to be her? It won't let me go, and it won't let you go either. We can be together again. It's so much nicer than going home to an empty house and unloving parents. She held out her hand to me. Trust me, brother. Please. My trigger finger felt as though struck with a serious case of arthritis. Janessa took a step towards me. Wait, no, it's not Janessa. Why did I suddenly forget that? Feed the forest with me, Jeremy. It's so much better being dead. Prove it. At last, I pulled the trigger. The creature hollered in pain as it fell to the ground. I'd hit a lung, which wouldn't be enough. I aimed the gun at its heart, but failed to pull the trigger as it rolled over and jumped back to its feet. Within seconds, it transformed from the corpse of my sister to its massive, dark skeletal form with massive antlers. My mind was caught between fight and flight. I stood there aiming my gun, but desperately wanted to flee. As it rushed towards me, I chose the latter option. I rushed over to the bag I'd left near the tent. Inside was a weapon I'd built myself. As I rushed over, I could tell I wasn't going to be able to outrun it. I fired another shot. The bullet lodged itself inside the neck of the beast. It cried out once more, buying me a bit of time to get to the bag. Why did I have it zipped up? As I tried to open it, the Wendigo rushed towards me again. Just like on the day of Janessa's death, I ran from the campsite, further into the forest. History was repeating itself. I was going to fail to avenge my sister. My parents were going to lose their last remaining child, all because I couldn't let this go. After at least several minutes, I'd somehow managed to keep outrunning it. I refused to slow down and look behind my shoulder. As I kept running, I noticed that I'd gone in some sort of circle. Up ahead of me was the campsite. I had the chance to grab the bag and pull out the weapon. The closer I came to the campsite, the louder the Wendigo's footsteps became. I could almost feel the wind as the creature tried to claw at me. Once I reached the campsite, I put my hand out, clutching the bag. It felt like almost too great a risk to put my gun back in my pocket, but I needed it free to pull out the weapon. I managed to do just that, and used my left hand to pull out a long, metal spike. I'd built it in such a way as to have the spike shoot out at the push of a button. The Wendigo wasn't going to slow down until it had me. I had no choice. I had to turn around. I had to have perfect timing. I had to collect my debt from the creature that took my twin sister. Chew on this, you son of a bitch. I turned around, pressing the button that shot the spike out. Less than a foot from my face was the Wendigo, its cry so loud my ears hurt and began to ring. I'd done it. The spike had pierced the heart. Silver Weakly, the Wendigo tried to swipe at me, but somehow lacked the strength. The next part was a gamble. I pulled out my gun and shot it in the head. It wasn't going to be enough to end the Wendigo, assuming what I'd read up was correct. I rushed back over to where I dropped my bag. Inside was a silver axe I'd also designed myself. When I returned, the creature was still conscious, letting out continuous, agonizing cries. I felt no sympathy. I hacked away at its wrists first. Its claws were the biggest threat, and I wanted them gone. Despite the weightlifting I'd been doing, it took over a dozen hacks to remove the first long-fingered hand. I pulled out my gun and shot it again in the head. It subdued the creature long enough for me to remove the second hand, and then I began on its head. As it began waking up again, I found myself screaming at the creature. I demanded it stay dead, calling it every insulting name that came to mind. Once I'd hacked most of the way through its head, I pulled it off. I kicked it a couple feet away. The Wendigo no longer moved. It took over an hour, but I'd managed to put each limb, the head, and torso in the trash bags I'd brought along. One by one, I carried them back to the campsite. I lit another fire, burning each bag. It took until dawn for me to burn the body. I left the torso for last. It was a struggle, but I managed to remove the heart, rip it to pieces, and place it in a silver box. After locking it, I looked around the site and decided to leave everything except my gun and the box behind. I was never particularly religious, but in the months leading up to my fight, I'd gotten to know a priest at a church in my area called St. Alphonsus. Lucky for me, he was there when I arrived with the silver box. His face went several shades paler when I showed it to him. Nevertheless, he escorted me to the back of the church with a pair of shovels and helped me bury it. Once done, I sat there, suddenly flooded with overwhelming emotions. I did it. The Wendigo had been slain. I'd done it. My sister's killer was dead, its body was burned, its heart in pieces and buried. "Janessa!" I cried out. "I kept my promise. I killed it. The Wendigo can't get anyone else. It won't kill anyone else." I placed my lowered head in my hands and continued to cry. "I'm sorry I wasn't braver before," I whimpered. "I'm so sorry I wasn't stronger before." I placed some flowers on my sister's grave an hour later. I talked to her tombstone as though she was there, listening. I like to believe she was, and that she was pleased with my accomplishment. Afterwards, I returned home and slept through the day and all night. Once morning came, I heard some noise downstairs. I went down to see that my parents were home and sitting down to breakfast. They stopped and looked over at me, saying nothing. I walked over and pulled up a seat. I had no appetite at all. "How was your trip? Where'd you guys go?" My parents exchanged looks before my father replied, "Oh, we went out west to visit your aunt and uncle." "Did you enjoy it?" I had difficulty keeping my chin from quivering as I lowered my head again. "Jeremy, sweetie, what's wrong?" Both my mother and my father got up and came over to me. "Why do you keep leaving me alone? God damn it, I'm the only kid you have left." They hugged me tightly, offering apologies. I could have sworn I felt another pair of hands on my shoulders. Their light touch was the most comforting of all. I really hope Janessa is proud of me. But a new task was ahead of me now. A harder task, perhaps. I was going to have to figure out how to reconcile with my parents. Our family had been broken long before her death. We'll never be whole again, but I know with some effort, we can be better than this. I hope she can continue to give me the strength to put myself together as I progress into adulthood.
I've been hidden for a while now. You know that feeling of your home being the safest place on Earth, as if it was an impenetrable fortress. It's a foreign feeling. Well, as it turns out, it only resides when you feel as if there is a trust between you and nature, and when you have broken that wall with an entity, you've lost the feeling, the happiest feeling of them all, safety. My home was a sanctuary at one point. You could confide in it for days if you wished. The feeling of comfort would draw people in like a compass towards the north. But it's gone now. It's foreign, as I said. You take it for granted, and when it's gone, it's utterly crippling. You have to hide, you have to run, just to try to find solace in a place that has none. It's in my house. The feeling is gone, and it's in my house. I've been hiding in my cleaning closet for around 2 hours, pretty sure. And I don't know how long else this will last as the thing, the Wendigo, is out for my blood, in my own house. I'll elaborate, but I don't have much time. Last week, it started with it taunting me. The hellos and the jacks still bumbling around in my mind as I type. The beast taunted me. Its bravado-packed lungs wanted to tease me and get me to move from sanctuary to catch a kill, and that doesn't make me scared. It just pisses me off. It started with the taunting while I was camping, and when I got fed up, I yelled back at it. And many reverb voices came and yelled right back at me, including my dead elderly neighbor, its early prey. Then it followed me. I screamed at it, I shot at it, and I ran home, as it was the safest place for me, and I wasted all the ammo on the damn kill. I sat there, for whatever feels like forever ago now, in front of my door, blocking it. But the creature is smart, found a way onto my leveraged patio, and glazed into my window. Then came the tapping. It was soft, and the monster crouched down to not peer in the window, but the tapping, it was worse. It grew, slowly rising from the soft tinking to thuds against the glass, slowly cracking the canvas from the middle out, until I heard it. Hello. The glass crumbled. It crawled in within the next second, the shards distinctly crunching underneath the weight of the thing. By this point, I had my back turned, behind a door, so I had no visuals. The only thing guiding me to that thing was the soft swooshing of the carpet under its feet, leading directly to the closet I was in. I leaned against the thin door as if it were a shield against a cascade of arrows, clinging my last hope tightly. It made it to the door. I heard it take a deep, long breath in, then out. It leaned in close and sniffed. Repeat a couple more times, and he was on his way. He went over to my room door, which was across the hall. I heard the inhale, a stuttering one this time, since he was sniffling. He took a pause. It felt like he debated for a moment. I opened the closet door a tiny crack to investigate what he had stopped for. He had his head tilted, then took a step back and rammed the door with his antlers. I jumped at the noise alone, as he hit the door fairly hard. I looked back to see him rearing himself up to go at it again, and I focused on his antlers. They still looked splintered, as if he took on a tornado and landed head first onto his antlers from 100 feet up in the air. It looked as if he took another ramming to the door. the antlers would crumble on impact. And so when he bowed his head and took a lunge forward and broke through the door, I was surprised. The door had a hole in it now. He had wriggled out of it a second earlier. The door had a hole, and to accompany it, the door bent inwards towards the hall, near the left upper corner, so much that the pull bit holding the hinge parts together and broke it to the extent that there was an inch of room between the two halves. He wrung 3 of his fingers into the gap of the door hinge, and another 4 into the hole. He bent forward and pulled swift and fast, tearing the door from its hinges and breaking the overlapping frame with it. Preceding this, the beast stuck his head in, towards an angle so his antlers didn't get caught in the hole where the door used to be. I was scared he found the scent of my stuff, since he could then find me based off my scent. He went inside the room, and around 30 seconds of him sniffing around, he started rummaging. I thought I heard a low, raspy, "See you here, you are here," as if he was talking to himself, muttering. I slowly shut the crack of the door I was behind, and as soon as I had fully done so, I heard it. There were 2 thuds, then a smash and crumble of glass. I looked out the reimbursed crack I made. He escaped. He smashed my window and escaped. Not only was I scared, now I was scared and pissed off, because now I have this damn thing taunting me like I'm its prey, in which I will not be. I'm going to leave this segment off here. I need to pack. I need to prepare for the inevitable, and I'm going to kill that damned beast.
I live in an area of Michigan that was habited by the Ottawa for centuries and probably millennia. I live in a really rural area, and even within that, my property backs up to a natural preserve. I'm the last house on my street, and the next closest is a solid 3/4 of a mile away. I'm a smoker and an insomniac, so I end up outside smoking at like 3 in the morning pretty often. Note, I'm not a writer, and I suck at creating suspense, so I will just try to tell it like it happened. I apologize if this story isn't quite up to the standards here, but I'll do my best. I think I should also mention I'm a staunch atheist, and generally don't believe in any gods, demons, sprites, sylphs, fairies, or any of that other crap. I posted this story to an Ask Reddit thread, and thought it might also work here. So, some random night, I'm out smoking. This is maybe a decade ago. It's after midnight, but maybe before 2 a.m. on my deck, and I hear a woman scream from the woods. Now, I know many of you are thinking it was either a coyote mating call, or maybe a bobcat, or maybe some smaller animal getting killed, all of which do sound like a woman screaming. But I've heard all of those plenty of times, and have learned how they sound. And besides, this one was screaming a combination of help and the most guttural, desperate sounds I have ever heard. It was a woman. My blood ran cold. I had never experienced this before. I'd read it in books and heard it described when people freeze in movies, but I'm telling you, I felt the cold go out from my heart and spread through my torso to my limbs. Some long asleep lizard part of my brain had just woken up. I felt like I was prey. And I'm a 6-foot, 200-pound guy who long ago was a collegiate linebacker, so I don't scare easy. I was frozen for what seemed like an hour as this woman's screams persisted, and then were cut off abruptly, but it was probably 20 to 30 seconds tops. At this point, I kind of regain my senses, and I decide a couple of things. Firstly, I'm going to go investigate, because I need to know what happened no matter how afraid I am. And at the time, I figured somebody just got murdered. Secondly, I need a weapon. I've got an old 30-40 Krag I inherited from my dad, who in turn inherited it from his dad who had carried it in World War I. I don't use this gun for hunting because it leaves too much damage, but it seemed appropriate for this. So I loaded 4 rounds, chambered the first one, grabbed a mag, and went out the door. There's a hiking trail that runs by my house and comes to a T about half a mile off and led in the direction of where I'd heard the woman, so it seemed the best bet. I set off down that trail, going quickly but as quietly as possible. In a couple minutes, I'm to the T. The screams came from north of here. I turn left, shine the light, and there, maybe 150 yards down the trail, is the biggest goddamn bullbuck I have ever seen, or so I thought. I'm actually pretty scared now because a hunter will tell you the most realistically dangerous thing in those woods is a buck in the rut, and I decide to just slowly move up on it and see if I can get close and then spook it away. I've probably closed the gap to about 30 yards when this buck stands up on its hind legs, looks me right in the face, and says, "Hey." I know, it's a bit anticlimactic, but that's what the damn thing said. It was absolutely not a buck snort. It was a clearly male, clearly human voice that said, "Hey." What I since have determined to be a Wendigo, I had no idea at the time, then takes a few slow steps towards me. I level the 30 or 40 at it and hold my ground, not saying a word. It closes the gap another few steps, and I let loose with the loudest scream I could muster. Rather than run, it breaks into a sprint towards me, and bam! I fire off a round. I'm working the bolt, trying to get the next one chambered when the thing takes a hard left and lopes off into the forest, now on all fours and running like a whitetail. I would have liked to search for the woman, but frankly, I was scared out of my wits. I pretty much walked backwards the mile to my house, all the while shining the flashlight about in a panic trying to spot the thing. I made it back to my house, locked all the doors and windows. Then I looked at the phone. Should I call the cops? Well, this was 10 years ago, and I have a grow-up, so I didn't. And besides, I figure if they did find a woman's body, they'd probably try to pin it on me. I didn't sleep at all. I just sat at the dinner table with the gun and a bottle of Smirnoff in front of me. And as soon as it was proper morning, I went out and searched that area. No signs of the woman. No signs of distress. No blood. No tracks except for my own from the night before. I checked the local paper for weeks and the regional affiliate and never heard anything about a missing woman. The worst part, though, is that on a half a dozen occasions since, I've been out smoking late at night, and I'll get that cold feeling. And then I'll hear, from a ways off into the woods, "Hey."
Thanks for watching, Wolfpack. If you want to submit your story, my email and subreddit will be in the description below. And also, if you're not subscribed, please do if you want. And don't forget to like and comment as well. Have beautiful nightmares, and I will see you next time.